There's some other really deep inside cuts here. Like, again, Disney showing how they're circling the drain and also how America's circling the drain. But even some of the musical numbers start with Jennifer Tilly's character, the cow, singing. Her singing is so bad that vultures will start to circle them because they think they're about to die. That's like the running gag, is that she sings so bad she sounds like she's dying as opposed to singing. But also, like, some of these musical numbers are not great, and they were sort of showing the vultures circling in that I guess the seats were empty when they were showing some of these, or people weren't going out and suggesting it because it just really wasn't worth suggesting. So I don't know, some self-aware, maybe some like self-fulfilling prophecies through the movie that actually play out in the real world.
Ask about Illuminati, since the charting up the ducks. Is it Disney mind control? Is this MK Ultra Deluxe? Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, should know about to chat far. Occult Disney, leading your plan, Pinocchio. Occult Disney, as a bomb so below. Pinocchio seeks fun on Pleasure Island, where traffickers need just falling minds. Captain Hook, the lost boy in Neverland, saving kids from Peter Pan's designs. Nemo feels to survive the Barracuda, and that nobody means no one. Snow White never took another breath. Bird Prince, the angel of death has come. Occult Disney, we go from real to real. Occult Disney, Bohemian Grove and no more real. Occult Disney, ask about Illuminati. Occult Disney, we teach occult to everybody. Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, you know about to travel far. Oh, Occult Disney, the new brand Pinocchio. Yeah, yeah, Occult Disney. Enjoy the show.
Howdy, partners. Welcome to the Occult Disney Podcast. It's where we go rootin', tootin', and rounding up all of them Disney movies to find out what secrets lie inside. This is Matt here. Hi, Thomas. How are you?
We're also going to be talking about some agricultural sacrificial rituals.
Oh, okay. I was thinking
Monsanto.
That's kind
America.
of the same thing. Yep. Lots of things today. It's Home on the Range. I thought about grabbing my my hummingbird guitar and singing it, but then I was like, that's a really bad idea, so it didn't happen.
I like the idea of it. How about that?
The idea is good. The execution of it's not good. Sometimes you realize that when you're doing a podcast, like, I got a good idea, but I'm going to be embarrassed doing it, and it's going to sound like crap on the podcast. So, and I'm not sure if these mics pick up music well. So, because when you make weird sound effects with your mouth, they sometimes, because they're being nice, like, take it out, right? So,
quick doses of cringe can work fairly well, but the longer it goes on, unless you're trying to Andy Kaufman it, but even Andy Kaufman didn't really get a lot of recognition until after he was gone.
Right.
So if you're comfortable with that, then yeah, go ham.
Yeah, I always love the doppelganger comedians, because his buddy still goes around doing Kaufman sometimes, right? There was like Gallagher's brother. There might be more than one. There might be 3 Gallaghers for all we know, or more.
Gallagher was one of the original celebrity clones before Jamie Foxx did it. Before anyone else, before Joe Biden even had a clone, right?
Before is a cool thing to do. For some reason, I was going to say Avril Lavigne first. I don't know why. Was that my first go-to? Probably because my wife likes her, but yeah. But yeah, Home on the Range is the last basically this is the end of the hand-drawn Disney animated studio. They pop back up a few years later and instantly like disappear again. So this is the end of the cap system that we started talking about around Oliver and Company time or whatever it was.
So I assume that since this is the last one, it printed money and it was just wildly successful. And Disney said, we need to shut off this money faucet.
It was, yeah, that's right. They were like, I was just hearing about how Miyazaki for Ghibli merchandise. I think this is no longer the case, or maybe it is, but it's like, no, we make $10 million from our merchandise. Anymore, we sour the brand and we make crap, right? So if we keep a cap on our merchandise, then it will be good merchandise, which is kind of weird. I mean, from an American perspective, that's weird, right? But you appreciate purity of, but that's not what Disney's doing here. They spent $100 million on this movie. It made worldwide 145. Once you factor in marketing, that does make it a flop.
Printing money, just not a lot of it. Just
not a lot of it. They did not get a company trip from this one, I'm guessing. Maybe they got a trip to the range.
And like right off the bat, it doesn't seem like it has any breakout Happy Meal toys. Like, what is it going to be? A horse, a cow?
Some kids are dumb. That'll entertain them. You know what? I take a toy of the rabbit. Why not?
Right, but I just mean if you compare this to like a freaking Buzz Lightyear or a Woody or almost any other Disney property, to be honest, just because they're farm animals, which isn't a bad thing, but I don't know if it has the star power, especially compared to like the voice cast that this movie had. It almost seemed like a missed opportunity to really put all these people to work doing something that was more supernatural, fantastical, magical.
It's like most people would probably answer the question, would you like to see Roseanne Barr, Judi Dench, and Jennifer Tilly voicing cows? Honestly, I'll think about that for a second, but I think that's a hard no for most people.
And Cuba Gooding Jr. And there's a lot.
Oh, my other question was, do you want to see Randy Quaid as a yodeling villain? Which I think most people would answer yes to.
Oh, what? I mean, this is just Uncle Eddie's side job. This is where the money actually came from, though.
Man, I watched the Vacation movies like an amazing number of times, so I was in on that. Screaming in Independence Day, screaming about the celebrity whackers.
Aliens. There's nothing this guy can't do except for maybe maintain sanity. Yeah.
So I mean, this did it's weird because we just watched a couple of the ones that were basically direct to video, but they put them in the theaters anyway. Or Teacher's Pet, Jungle Book 2. It's like, are these movies you would just sit your kids in front of as a babysitter? Home on the Range, I'm pretty much like, I think it is. So
movie.
Yeah, this felt longer than Princess Mononoke to me somehow, even though it's half the length.
Right. This one's 1:15, which isn't so bad compared to all different things. The biggest thing it was missing for me was just a freaking UFO. If they just had a single UFO, abducted cow in the background, it would have just made this movie so much better to just plant that seed. But they don't do that.
That helps Spice World. I said Spice World for a different podcast where the girls have to pee, so they get off their bus, go into the woods, and meet a UFO. And the aliens went there.
It moves
without that scene. Yeah, without that scene. Because one of my co-hosts was like, he had just watched it for the first time. He's like, I always thought this was a sci-fi because I had seen that scene.
I mean, technically it is.
Yeah. There is a weird thing. Chief Offender, great movie, but Chief Offender is Back to the Future 3, right? Where all of these filmmakers in the 80s and 90s, and maybe this is kind of the tail end of it, was like, you know what everybody wants? A Western. And I know in the 80s, I didn't want a Western. Like when Back to the Future 3 came out, it's like, well, you just showed me like Crazy 2015 and Biff Tannen 1985, and now we're just going to go hang out with cowboys? What?
I think that this was a tug towards our parents' heartstrings, though. Like this was Disney using weaponized nostalgia, and other people weaponizing the fact that you had like all these John Wayne sort of Westerns that they grew up with. So it might have been like, hey, grandpa, take your, hey, dad, take your kid to the movie or something and see this. But yeah, it It didn't have the same hit, although are you saying Wild Wild West wasn't an amazing breakout role for everyone involved?
Well, the great thing about that movie, and I'm not being ironic on this, is I forget the producer's name, but for years he'd been trying to put a giant robot spider into a movie. He wanted Superman to fight a giant robot spider and a few other things. And he finally got his giant robot spider in Wild Wild West, and somehow that makes me really happy about that movie.
But there was definitely a resurgence of Western, and I think that's probably what makes the most sense, is that like that generation's parents or grandparents found it, Howdy Doody was a freaking cowboy, right?
Maybe 10-year-olds of 2024 hate superheroes. That could be the case. And I just wouldn't know.
Come on, Dad. That's so.
Why are we watching this
2000s.
Spider-Man so lame? Yeah. So, I mean, that could be the case. I wouldn't know.
Do you have any good movies about just cows and horses? Come on. Well, actually, they'll be kind of rare, right? All of a sudden, kids are going to be more familiar with superheroes than they will with just regular livestock.
Come on, Dad. I don't want to see Captain America. Let's see the real Captain America and Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1, starring Kevin Costner, because that's what the kids want to see, right? That and Home on the Range. I don't know. I'm just guessing the generational flip could happen. As I was talking about Teacher's Pet last week, my wife and I keep telling my daughter, shouldn't you study less? Why don't you go do something? I don't know. What? You want to go to summer school? Why? So, generational gaps, man.
Well, there was a couple other movies too that, aside from the Western, that right around this time, or maybe like the decade preceding it, you've got these movies about animals going off on adventures on their own in a human world, and they can telepathically talk, or they can somehow communicate. So you had like Homeward Bound series, you had like the Milo and Otis kind of series. There was a whole like slew of these, and I think that this movie kind of plays on that same thing where they run away from the farm, and then now they are the main characters. The humans are just back at home worried for them, but the humans really have no role in the story itself.
I saw Homeward Bound 2 in the theater, and I'd like to explain why. Because we were 17 at the time, or 16, not quite old enough to buy R-rated movie tickets. So we went to see Army of Darkness, but our friend and his dad had already gone in because we were running a little late, I guess. So we bought tickets for Homeward Bound 2. And then they caught us, and they didn't kick us out of the theater. They made us watch Homeward Bound 2.
The theater or the parents?
The theater. They're like, go in there. We're screening Homeward Bound 2 because that's what your tickets have. You'd think you just kick the teenagers out, I mean, now I'm like, why didn't they just kick us out of the theater for that? But they made us watch Homeward Bound 2, which I guess maybe that's its own punishment in a way, especially when you're coming for Army of Darkness.
The trick that I remember, if we're on a tangent really quick, but I remember like when Titanic came out, and Titanic was like a 3-hour movie or something. So you could buy a ticket to Titanic and then end up sneaking into 2 other movies and then just leave around the time Titanic was ending, and no one would be the wiser, not even close.
I saw Titanic in the theater like 4 times, but each time I saw Titanic. So
that's because I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Well, no, it was my senior year of high school, and all the girls wanted to see Titanic, so you could take girls Titanic easily.
Okay, fair enough.
That's why I saw in the theater that many times. Most people aren't aware of this, but before, say, like Psycho, before the early 60s, you would just buy a ticket and walk in. You might go in at the middle of the movie, and then you'd wait for it to end, and then you'd see the first half or something like that. So I wonder if I guess they didn't have theater hopping because I was generally one theater at the time, but that's how you get around it.
I gotta say, and I realize that I might be in like a weird fringe minority on this, but like, I hate the movies. I hate the cinema, the whole experience. I don't think I've ever really truly liked it. It either puts me to sleep or it's just inconvenient at best. It's an absolute nuisance at worst, to the point where like it ruins movies for me. I don't know. I realize how sacrilege that would be for especially like film aficionados and even directors that are like, you've never seen the movie unless you've seen it in this exact ratio on this exact film projector and this sound treatment and in a big empty large room. I don't know. I don't know if I believe any of that. And I don't mind that the cinema is dying in its current form. I don't mind it.
You're on
There,
a
I
team with
said
my
it.
mom. I still go to the. You've actually said it before, to be honest, but
Yeah.
no, I still hit the movies. Like maybe once a month. As I become an older fart, I do start to have to fight the specter of sleep sometimes, especially because in Japan the late show is cheaper. So you try and go to the late show if you can. The problem this week is I think there's nothing worth seeing that's showing. Let's see what's showing in the Japanese Toho cinema this week. I guess you don't have to say Japanese if you just said Toho.
Do you mostly just look for American movies, or do you watch a decent amount of like straight up Japanese movies too?
Nah, because they're just in straight up Japanese with no subtitles, which I've seen a few kids movies that way because I took kids to see them. But I guess
that makes sense. Yeah, they don't by default show subtitles for Japanese movies in Japan.
Yeah, The Fall Guy is just now showing in Japan. I think that came out like 6 months ago in America. You can see the Garfield movie in Japanese, no subtitles. Inside Out 2 in Japanese, no subtitles. Twisters with subtitles. I don't want to see that though. Something called Mononoke. I guess
Twisters.
That's just a beast then. Yeah. Deadpool and Wolverine is now just dubbed. That's interesting. I did see that a few weeks ago, but
I might actually be interested in seeing just straight up in Japanese the whole movie.
That could be fun, actually.
That could actually be really fun.
But here's what I would see if I were going to go right now. This is a very lowly reviewed movie called What If Shogun Ieyasu Tokugawa Was to Become the Prime Minister? That's the title of the movie. It takes place in 2020, and as the Japanese government completely fails in handling the pandemic, they get historical holograms of all the most prominent figures in Japanese history. So the guy that started the whole Edo period becomes the new prime minister in hologram form. So that's interesting from from our perspective.
I like that. Like a Hall of President style.
Right. But it's a dumb comedy. So that's layered on top of it. So I don't, or maybe it's really, no, it can't be serious. I did see the trailer play before Deadpool and Wolverine. So, anyway, yeah. So Home on the Range, I would not have seen in the theater anyway. One, because when this came out, I was 25. So yeah, this was not, I might see the Pixar, but I'm not going to see this, Also, it was my first year in Japan, and this was definitely only playing dubbed. If you live in Tokyo, I guess you could probably see like Disney movies with subtitles. But if you don't live in Tokyo or Osaka, that's not happening, It
was the first time that I've seen this movie. I thought that I might have seen it, but no, it must have been like one of the Homeward Bounds.
It might be the first time anyone has seen this movie, because this is considered like one of the biggest flops in Disneydom. Even though I guess it did make more in its budget technically. So
I want to say it's a serviceable movie, but yeah, I guess the way that you phrased it, I can drop that now, that it does somehow feel longer than Mononoke, which is a long movie by any standard. And that one moved along faster just because I was so much more engaged. This movie, the absolute peak is Randy Quaid's musical number that turns into like a psychedelic Pink Floyd laser light show.
Yeah, that's my takeaway from this movie. Take that out, keep that. The rest can
that is the absolute peak of the movie. And this is from someone that just usually despises musicals. I usually don't like the musical numbers in any of them, and I can't tell if this is the one redeeming quality of the movie, or it just is like objectively a really great scene. I want to lean towards objectively. It's really, really cool. It doesn't sound bad. It doesn't go on too long. It doesn't even need to be seen in context. Like, you don't even need to know.
Like I say, take it out and have it,
Yeah, dude. Like this song could exist. And if this were the trailer for Home on the Range, I feel like they probably would have gotten more people showing up. If all they said was like, come watch Home on the Range, and then they played the musical number, and then it just said, this summer or whenever the hell it premiered.
That's what they did for
Frozen
and The Lion King. So Disney does that sometimes. The Lion King was just a Circle of Life song. That was the trailer. Frozen was just Let It Go. I remember seeing it because my friend and I were there. I'm like, I saw the Frozen trailer, Just Let It Go. I'm like, this is Broadway crap. I don't want to see this movie, which honestly, I did want to see Frozen. But in that case, the trailer made me think I did not want to see Frozen. So.
And I guess dipping my toe a little bit into the whole occult decode of this episode, it is a little bit appropriate that this is the last sort of Disney movie of its kind with the hand-drawn animation for a long time. And I guess we could both easily argue this is the last time that they did it this way, because even when they started doing hand drawn, they had a completely different digital workflow and process because it was so much more into the future, right? I think it was Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, 5 years. They dismantled, like I said, they dismantled their cap system. They had to rebuild something new. Although I will say, for the villain songs, you don't need to watch this movie because Nightmare Before Christmas had an equally good villain song, right? I forgot the name. I should remember it, but I don't. And then Princess and the Frog, I think I remember that one has a pretty good villain song.
Yeah, that's probably the best part of that movie too, is the villain song.
Yeah, but I will
want to say
watch
Hercules
it again
too, man. Hercules also.
Yeah. They do own the villain songs.
That's a new theme that I don't think we've picked up on, where movies where the highlight of the movie is the villain song in a Disney movie.
Because the evil queen, Maleficent, they don't get songs in the classic Disney movies, right?
I don't believe, man. I mean,
Ursula.
Go back and watch it again. Yeah, Ursula.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just thinking maybe Ursula is the first big villain song. Does Jafar get one?
Jafar doesn't sing one, but he gets his own song, I believe.
Yeah. Scar doesn't get one. Scar gets one, I think, but it's not a standout if I remember. But I guess it's with the Renaissance is where they really start kicking in. Well, the Rescuers, okay. I guess villain songs are a pretty long tradition.
Coming next, Occult Disney soundtrack decodes.
Well, hey, I don't remember if I mentioned it, but I've been eyeing the Disney Villains tarot deck at the nearby bookstore. So I thought maybe I should start pulling those out in the middle of episodes and doing Disney Villain tarot readings.
We definitely could.
Yeah. Hey, now I think I just talked myself into buying it, especially since I'm on air just saying that. Go ahead.
So some of the I was going to say too, to finish that thought, it's appropriate that this is the last movie of its kind, even inside Disney, because at this point, Disney is like a strong facet of American culture. And this movie essentially, and you were saying before that you didn't really understand like what the motivation or the plot or any like ultimate resolution was. Well, this whole entire movie is about the disintegration of American core values and just being replaced by just straight up commodities and robber barons and bankers. And that this being the last time that we see any good old hand-drawn American probably wasn't produced all entirely in America, by the way. It's probably shopped out in some places, I'm assuming. But like good old American hand-drawn Disney animation, like not only is that dying, as also emphasized by that mid-century modern look, which is a distinctly American style cartoon, right? This is like Hanna-Barbera or even like Looney Tunes style, like that mid-century.
Yeah, I started wondering why Warner Brothers wasn't suing them in the middle of this movie, to be honest. You stole our matte paintings.
It makes such a great analogy though, that was like, golden era, post World War II, so 40s, 50s, golden age America, cartoon style. Also, it takes place around that time. I mean, I know they did like a Western thing, but because that mid-century modern, it's essentially like 19th, maybe early mid 20th century. So this movie flops, the country flops. Like it's a perfect sort of telltale for exactly what Disney saw coming for like the country as a whole, not just itself as a company, but the entire country that was about to go through it.
Yeah, I guess here's one of the big disconnects for me is like maybe a personal thing. One, I generally don't want to go for a Western. There are some Westerns I like a lot, but generally that's not appealing to me. I do like reading history. I've read a lot of history of that period. So I'm sitting here, Home on the Range is kind of in Fantasyland, Old West. But I'm like, was this Kansas? That's the state song. Is this Montana where they're, having all the posses and roundabouts and, getting squatters off their land? Is this Texas? It's like, is this the 1880s? Is this the 1860s? That definitely changes things. Again, Back to the Future 3 is at least nice enough to tell you that's 1885 in Hill Valley, right?
Yeah, they don't state it, but it does seem like it's probably like any time between 1860s and 1960s. And in fact, it might be a combination of both of those. Like if you drove 20 miles in any direction in this particular world of on the range, that you could probably end up in sort of like a 50s neighborhood. Like it seems
Right.
like they kind of coexist.
Yeah. So, by the way, the most recent book I read, which I will recommend if people want to know what was going down in the Old West, this one I think basically is Montana, Wyoming focused. It gets around everywhere. Cattle Kingdom: The Hidden History of the Cowboy West by Christopher Knowlton was a pretty good read. So I'm also looking back at how bizarre my reading list, because the books I read before that was a book about the history of Siskel and Ebert, Patrick Stewart's autobiography, Batman and the Rise of Nerd Culture, and one of Carrie Fisher's books. So kind of that's what Matt reads these days.
Just a melting pot of great minds.
Yeah, there you go. Have you spent some time on the range? Because we're both East Coasters, so.
Well, I mean, I grew up in upstate New York, so not necessarily a range, but like all my parents' friends and parents, like hunting deer and eating venison was kind of like a normal thing. That wasn't even like a hunter culture. That was just like how most people got a decent amount of food for long periods of time. And then when I got stationed in the military to Texas, I got to learn a whole bunch of them all cow ranchers and I guess versions of kind of like Texas redneck, although I spent a lot of time in San Antonio, which I always heard kind of referred to as like the city slicker version of Texas. Like everyone in San Antonio had like new polished boots, kind of like the equivalent of skateboarders, but like their skateboards have no marks on them on like the trucks or on the actual board itself. So that's the version of a San Antonio cowboy.
Yeah, I've been to San Antonio once, and I remember eating fancy food and seeing the Alamo, right? Of course. But yeah, I'm just bringing up my only experience in this part of the world, I guess, is two. When I was 13, 14, we took a car trip to New Mexico to do the Philmont Scout Ranch. So you go there, then you just walk around in the woods for 2 weeks, and yeah, so. I mean, I guess that's fun. I don't know. But yeah, we came through San Antonio. And then I have spent a little time in Wyoming. I visited a girlfriend up there 20 years ago. Yeehaw.
my version of being a cowboy, I guess, because I didn't really grow up with Westerns or I didn't care about them as much either. But there was this show called Hey Dude. And I feel like that was probably the closest that I ever would have gotten into to being a cowboy, which is not to say very much. This might have been after you stopped caring about shows on Nickelodeon.
I do remember hearing the name, but yeah. Oh, by the way, when I went to Wyoming, I ate at Dick Cheney's favorite restaurant. Apparently, that was their marketing strategy. This is Dick Cheney's favorite restaurant. It was off season, so everything was like half price. That was nice.
Yeah. Asterisk when he's in Wyoming.
Yes. You can eat human meat here, as he's doing the most dangerous game. Well, I think I was eating buffalo steak or something there. Yeah, because it's Wyoming, right?
So
all in Wyoming eat the buffalo. Yeah, so I thought it was buffalo. Yeah, you
Buffalo,
you lie
New
about
York.
that. That's right. So I guess if the West is in your blood, maybe this is a little better. Grandpa who really wants some Roy Rogers gets our villain is kind of dressed up like Roy Rogers or Gene Autry.
None of this movie is any of the cool stuff about the Wild West. Like this is just about farm animals that are being sold to another farm and they don't want to get auctioned off, and for whatever reason, and this is the part where the logic kind of breaks down, unless you take the occult interpretation of the whole thing or like the esoteric like overlying meaning, which is just about America's like resistance to change and then being forced to go through it and banks taking over. Because the essential premise of this movie, I guess, which would be a good place to start. So here, rewind. Here's where we're really starting now. But the whole premise of this movie is that it's no longer a sustainable practice to kind of be a farmer anymore or just focus completely in agriculture. The banks are coming through and they're taking over, they're repossessing everybody's land, and they're going up to these public auctions. And like the nefarious backplot is that the reason that a lot of these farms are going out of business in this Disney plot line, at least, is that there's this guy that's going around stealing everything, Alameda Slim, and that he basically is going onto people's farms, somehow stealing all of their cattle, And then when they go broke and have to auction their land, he comes in with the money he made from stealing cattle, presumably, and he buys the farms for pennies on the dollar. And his idea is to just completely buy up all the different farmland. Like he's Monsanto, essentially.
As I was about to say, my note here was Monsanto Slim.
Yeah, Monsanto Slim, Tyson Slim. Like that's kind of what this guy like in a very, very real way. It's what he represents, even to the point where he is leveraging government ineptitude to enact this whole plan. And in some extreme cases, he even using government funds in order to like make all of this happen for himself. So here you've got, like a straight up corporation that is taking over and turning all of the regular farms into these big scaled up factory farms. It's really the underlying message of this entire movie.
Yeah, for sure. It is, like Disney used to be. It's interesting they take that tack since Disney used to be in bed with Monsanto, like sexually, right? They were in Disneyland. They were in them.
Well, it's not necessarily the bad guys, though. I don't see it as Disney showing it's the bad guys. If anything, this could be just another magical spell of like, hey, kids, check it out. The Old West is lame. The old American value system is lame. Old shit like chicks and old cows and ladies. It's all lame. Get with the times. Everyone's become a banker now. Like, get on board. We're screwing the Americans. Get on board. And there's like a bunch of bankers in like a limo, and it zooms off. It's not necessarily Disney's showing you like a warning sign. It's them casting a spell that's just like, look how lame old American culture is. Let's just kill it already. Let's bring it out into the back of the shed and just take it out of its misery.
Well, the Cattle Kingdom book again is kind of the antidote to that, I guess, because that is about the bankers destroying the way of life very nicely. Keeping in mind that any historical book is one person's perspective of that. So yeah, I was sitting here thinking, why not take it a little farther? Here's me plussing up the movie in a couple ways. One, maybe you could make this like Disney's Animal Farm. I mean, there is a good Animal Farm animation already, but hey, here you could do it Disney's Animal Farm here. That could be kind of fun. Based in the West. Also, does Disney have any big IP that might fit this, like a mountain, like a big thunder railroad that has a story, that has a banker behind it and stuff that in the backstory for people who want to read crap on the website before they go to Disneyland. But Big Thunder Mountain, why not use that? People know that and they're making this is when they're doing Mission to Mars and the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion and Pirates.
And there's a
right?
train. They integrate a train as like the big plot resolution in this movie, so it could have taken place on Thunder Mountain. And I guess that actually would have made the Thunder Mountain ride lamer. You know what I mean? It would have made the movie cooler. It would have made the ride lamer.
But did Eddie Murphy really make the Haunted Mansion lamer?
No, definitely not. But putting Jennifer Tilly and Roseanne cows somewhere in the line on the way to Thunder Mountain somehow makes it feel less thrilling. So I don't know if they would have gotten any of like the Thunder Mountain coolness rubbed off on the movie. If anything, it would have polluted the Thunder Mountain.
Yeah, I guess this movie maybe had a little bit of too many cooks in the kitchen. Like this is maybe the most committee late Eisner period sort of thing. It said the director pitched this before Pocahontas. He was thinking Annie Oakley, Buffalo Bill, Pecos Bill, Pocahontas, and they jumped on Pocahontas. So that's why that got made much earlier, right? And this is one of those things where it looks like it got canceled for a while. They wrote the songs and started writing the songs in 1999. Then they got new directors, and then the new directors had to figure out how to fit the songs. And so, yeah, that's not great for a creative process. We got to shoehorn this movie together,
I wonder if anyone knew Randy Quaid was going to be the breakout musical number in this whole thing. I wonder if anyone saw that coming.
I think they were starting to work out that the villain songs. I don't. Sometimes you're like, oh, it's like a subconscious thing in Disney movies, and I think that's a conscious thing. Like, hey, these villain songs work, especially when Alan Menken's on the job. So I have a feeling they knew that was going to stand out as the big sequence. The original name, by the way, was Sweating Bullets. Okay.
The original name of the movie was going to be Sweating Bullets?
Yeah.
That sounds so much cooler. That sounds like there's going to be guns involved.
That would suggest that, yeah, with a very different story. I think a boy is the it says Captain's Courageous style. Boy would have been the protagonist in that version, which I don't know. That's probably a good idea instead of cows. I mean, is anyone really into cows? I don't think people are into cows that much, and maybe cowboys, lonely people on distant farms. I mean, other than that.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a decent job of isolating ourselves from one of the main food supplies of protein in the States. Where like, it's somewhat rare. Like most people know they're cows because that's where like the glue comes from.
There has been some food weirdness in Japan. It's not beef, but Japan's been having a rice shortage, which is pretty much artificial. But yeah, the supermarkets, I don't do the shopping, and I don't eat much rice either. So I don't care that much. But yeah, the supermarkets have had some empty shelves because the reasons being, so the yield was a little lower, but nothing critical. And we're about the parent September. I mean, I can see that the rice is about ready when I'm walking around in Nagano. So that's the small reason. But speaking of like weird, not propaganda, mass manipulation, I guess we've had all these new warnings recently. So 3 weeks ago, the Japanese government was like mega quake warning, and everyone flipped out mega quake and bought a bunch of rice. I don't know why you'd want that after a disaster. It seems
What's the Japanese word for mega quake when they say it all scary?
Oh geez, I'll need to look that up because I was looking at Japan Today, which gives it to you in English. I'll
you don't hear them like say it.
I'll get on that I'll get on that when you're on your next when you're on your next bit. And then and then earlier this week, this is crazy. Last Saturday I'm leaving work and my coworker's like, "Oh, and do you take the train, blah blah. The typhoon's coming on Tuesday." But it slowed down so much that currently it's still not here, and it's not going to be here until Sunday or Monday now. So it's just like slowly dumping rain over everyone. They made a special typhoon warning as well. And then a bunch of people bought rice again. So they've been having these like, super warning. And then everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I go through this annually in Florida because of hurricane season, which we're right in the middle of right now. Actually, I don't think it ends until like December 1st or something. But the reason, and I also, ironically, when I was working at Disney, part of the aspect of working at Disney too is they take on a bunch of outside client work, especially like government style work, because why wouldn't you want to have, produced by Disney somewhere on like the back papers to whatever, make someone feel like they got a great deal and a great experience. And one of those clients was the Florida Department of Emergency Management, which are the ones that are in charge of hurricanes, floods, wildfires, all the way to like shootings and stuff, like a campus shooting. That's all Department of Emergency Management. And they had Disney basically contracted to make all their cool like marketing stuff and commercials and animations. But one of the things that I got as an insight from there was them running like actual simulations with the real Florida Department of Emergency Management. And one of the very typical strategies is that you always lean towards the absolute worst case scenario, because at best, you are seen as like a prophetic hero that saved everyone because you were like, everyone evacuate now, or else you'll die. And then if they really would have died if they didn't evacuate, then you're like, man, that guy was on top of it. And then at worst, if you're totally wrong, you just spurred the economy. You just got people to buy a bunch of rice and gas and water and a bunch of other perishables that they're going to have to burn through. And if you can do it enough times and not just completely sort of like break the stamina of everyone until they just can't handle it anymore, then all you're ever doing is spurring the economy. So, it's kind of the same thing with like a doctor, or like a doctor will more often be like, you've got a month to live. I'm so sorry to tell you this, even though there's a good chance it'll be like 12 months. Because if you say 12 months and then they die in a month, now you look like you didn't know what the hell you're talking about. But if you say 1 month and it lasts for 12, I know it's not the most perfect analogy, but it's kind of like you always go with the worst reading, because if it ever isn't as bad as you're predicting, then people can usually live with that. Like they're happy in contrast, right? That like it's not as bad as it could have been, even if it never really was going to be that bad.
Well, the weird part in Japan is both of these warnings. The mega quake, which is, by the way, is Kyodai Jishin Chui, is the Japanese. It's the first time ever. They've never given a mega quake advisory before. First time ever. The special typhoon warning, first time ever on the mainland. They've done it for Okinawa before, but they've never done it for the mainland. And then 2 weeks ago, so right before all these warnings, the prime minister said he's stepping down in late December, and we're having parliamentary elections next month. So conspiracy brain at work, right? Get everyone flipping out before the elections. Maybe they're more easily malleable. I don't know.
How direct is the translation of mega in this context? Like 100 times the size of a normal quake, or just mega big? Like, is that an actual mega?
Kyodai. I guess Kyodai would be the mega part. It's just very big. It's very big in Japanese. So it's the very big
exact measurement.
Oh yeah, there is no it says that. Okay, well here we go. I didn't know this until I'm now looking at it, because they don't say it on the news. They're just like mega quake, or excuse me, Kyodai Jishin Chui, 7.1 or stronger. I think the Japanese scale is slightly different, but not as much as temperatures. Fahrenheit, Celsius. But I remember when we had the big quake, and 13 years ago. Wow. In Japan, it was a 9.1, but the American agencies called it an 8.9. Either way, it was insane. But yeah.
Oh, the Japanese are more fragile people, so I could see them rating things just slightly higher.
And we also have intensity scales, right? So 4 is where you start to really notice the quake, and 7 is hope your house stands up, on the intensity scale. So we have like 2 scales that are both one's slightly different than the American one. One's like way different, or the Richter scale, I guess. So we use something slightly different. I don't know why. We have a lot of earthquakes. I guess Japan can use whatever they feels best, because we have to deal with.
Well, I mean, technically, they've probably been recording them longer in Japan than they have in America.
Right, exactly. So I haven't experienced any American earthquakes. I know the East Coast has had a couple, but I was never around for any of those. And they didn't have those at first. I was in the East Coast for 25 years and never encountered an earthquake. That's interesting. Okay, because there's been a few in the past few years, right? Maybe New Madrid's going to go nuts soon.
Do you know if anyone in Japan worked on Home on the Range? Because in some of the very previous movies, they had I guess Tokyo involved in the production.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's true. Those are more for the ones that were like almost direct to video. So because they did the Stitch animation, the TV show. There was something recently, maybe it's Jungle Book. One of the Peter Pan, one of these almost direct to video ones had Disney Toons Japan on it. I don't see any information about that, at least on this wiki page. Production company, Walt Disney Feature Animation, probably Florida and California.
Okay, I mean that makes sense that you would have like this death of the American culture, death of American animation be done by Americans.
It would have been Disney animation, yeah.
To have it done in like Bulgaria or something, but yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, this is the end of the original Beast, right? The ball that got rolling with Snow White. This actually is the end of it. So, and Princess of the Frog is a new ball.
There's some other really deep inside cuts here. Like again, Disney showing how they're circling the drain, and also how America's circling the drain. But even some of the musical numbers start with Jennifer Tilly's character, the cow, singing. Her singing is so bad that vultures will start to circle them because they think they're about to die. That's like the running gag, is that she sings so bad she sounds like she's dying as opposed to singing. But also, like, some of these musical numbers are not great, and they were sort of showing the vultures circling in that I guess the seats were empty when they were showing some of these, or people weren't going out and suggesting it because it just really wasn't worth suggesting. So I don't know, some self-aware, maybe some like self-fulfilling prophecies through the movie that actually play out in the real world.
Yeah, I guess so. I was just looking here at the cows being just kind of stupid. I mean, I guess you do think of, you stupid cow, right? So it is just a weird focus to put in this movie on the cows themselves. Oh yeah, here we go. I got this from a IMDb comment, but the dairy farm only has 2 cows, and once Maggie shows up, they have 3 cows. That's not a very. So I'm just wondering if that has fits into your theory that this dairy farm has no cows.
Well, the dairy farm is kind of anything but. Like, the lady that's running this isn't actually running a farm at all, because in a farm, right, you're basically raising animals and selling animals or butchering animals. But she's just kind of keeping these animals around as friends, which is not a sustainable way of running a farm. Like, at some point, you do have to treat your livestock as products, even if you treat them, like with decent love and care and everything. At a certain point, you're not just there to raise animals and live with animals. Like, she's almost homesteading a little bit, which is not like, that's kind of the whole reason that the bank is coming to take everything away from her. And I guess I'm not saying in like a traditional sense, but in like a modern American sense, right? 1860s, 1960s, either one of those time periods, you got to be raising all of your livestock for either slaughter or commercial means or resale. And she takes on this extra huge dairy cow that she probably has no means to support. It's kind of wild, right? The second she gets this huge prize-winning dairy cow, immediately just goes bankrupt. Like, what was the other plan there? How was she ever going to bring in money? It's how much was she going to milk out of this damn cow within a week that it would have prevented the bank from repossessing her farm? And holy cow, does that, pun intended, bank move fast, right? They deliver the letter that you owe $750, and then in the movie time, it's almost like within 3 days, the bank's like, "Oh, you didn't come up with the $750? All right, we're auctioning it off."
Yeah, in the actual frontier, that's going to take a good 6 months before anything happens. She's got plenty of time. I also, just to get to your last comment, yeah, there's one of the lines that did make me chuckle a bit was that, who wants to eat it? Who would want to eat a chicken? So obviously the animals are oblivious to the fact that they could get slaughtered.
Because they're not living in reality anymore. This lady has sheltered them so much from any semblance of reality, to the point where it's now to everyone's detriment. Like, now everybody loses the farm because she wasn't willing to kill a pig every once in a while. Like, that's really what's happening, right? Like, she, at any point, she probably could have slaughtered or auctioned off all the pigs, and then bam, now you've got at least payments to go towards paying the mortgage or whatever. They don't really get into like the financial obligations and like how all this works out, but the whole point being that the people are telling her you should auction off some livestock. She's like, never. This is my family. And most farmers usually have varying degrees of like, don't name the animals. You know what I mean? At least not the ones that are going to have to get auctioned off or worse.
Yeah, there's a lot of handing around of money, like cash money in this movie too, which I thought was kind of weird, because in America in general at this point, they were still, you have greenbacks and stuff. They still hadn't really worked out what the currency was. And in the Old West, everything, anything, who knows what the currency is? Just a pile of green cash is kind of weird.
Again, this is part of the reason why it feels like a mosh between 1860 and 1960. Like, you could almost combine the two time periods into one and sort of be left with this mid-century modern vibe that they've got going on.
I mean, I guess that is the current thing. What's it? The Killers of the Flower Moons, like 1920s, right? So later West does, sometimes you get that. I think even a lot of Gene Autry movies, or again, Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, are actually like, they take place modern day because there's just enough semblance of Old West still around. I mean, there aren't cowboys around like there used to be cowboys. They were gone by the late 1880s, right? But Gene Autry still made some sense in the modern world in like 1940, whereas now you can't really do that at all. I think you just have a bunch of like guys that go to the square dancing hall on Friday night, line dancing hall. It's line dancing now, isn't it? Ever been line dancing?
Square dancing is like a much more niche version of Western specific dancing. I think line dancing is the more approachable one.
That was the other thing that the girls in high school drug us off to: Titanic and line dancing. So I've been to the line dancing place multiple times. I don't like line dancing.
It always smells like peanuts in those places.
That's better. I thought you were about to say piss, so that was like peanuts ain't too good.
Yeah, that's kind of
as long as you're not allergic.
Kind of what I did say, isn't it?
They did have a mechanical bull though. That was fun.
Did you ride it?
No, it's too chicken.
Oh.
I know one of us wrote it, yeah. But yep. They had a live band, so I guess that's cool. You know, a big hit live band. I'd rather see the Country Bears, says the guy that does a Disney podcast. But yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you had to put me down to it, Midwestern cowboy culture is probably the most American culture that there really is. And I realize that it's heavily influenced by like South America or Middle America and like Mexico and like rancheros and stuff. But that's America. You know what I mean? Like the East Coast was pretty much just European nonsense that was kind of boiled down a little bit, but that's all European. You've got the Southern coast, or if you go to like Louisiana, the Bayou, that's all Cajun and kind of French inspiration, right? Like maritime, like almost pirate style. So I can't think of anything really more American than either the Cowboys or maybe like the Mormons, which I would say there's like a huge overlap between cowboy and frontiersman and sort of Mormon. Like they're all.
How about the Beach Boys? They got a complete with a great dark side.
I don't know.
They connect with Manson. How American is that?
Yeah, well, I guess old. Like some of the earliest, like specifically non-European, truly Americanized culture seems to be, and that might be one of the other appeals to like that Western style movies and everything else, is that like, well, of course you don't love America. You're freaking in Japan. That explains so much.
Here's some interesting Americanas, because Disney often avoids, especially early on, does not do much America. So what is there? There's Ben and Me, which we actually did not do for this podcast. That wasn't one of the compilations.
There's Oliver and Company.
Yeah, I was going to also bring up the Headless Horseman, Ichabod Crane one, which we did do, right. And that one that's probably up to this point. Is that the most Americana Disney's gotten until Home on the Range?
I mean, yeah, but I would still kind of consider that European. I hope that doesn't sound bad, but I feel like New England, it's right in the freaking name.
Yeah, and they paired it up with Mr. Toad, of course. That also, so
right? Yeah, it didn't help the matter at all that half the movie was British accent.
So this is, I guess, the deepest. I mean, other than Disneyland, is also one of the main prime points of Americana. As far as their films go, this is the deepest, I guess, they've dove into Americana. I mean, I guess you could say Toy Story did to a certain extent, but that's Pixar also. So those are different minds at work, especially at this point in time. And
also, I mean, I would argue that yeah, that's American culture, but that's way more of the melting pot version of American culture. Like it's accessible to everyone, whereas American Cowboy is like a Halloween costume, you know, like that's that's the American version of the drunk sorority or frat guys that put on like the sombrero and the big mustaches, or like, you know, like the caricature-esque stereotypical things. Like that is the American stereotypical outfit, is it not? Is the Western cowboy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, there's the Japanese perspective, you know, there's like the Billy the Kid Steakhouse, which is an American place. So
exactly.
It's funny, you go to the American restaurant and yeah, they often have the old Westy looking stuff. And then they serve you a steak that would never be served in America. It's like a hamburger steak, like on a grill, like hot plate, that they wouldn't serve in America because of insurance claims, right?
Right, but I guess point proven, right? Like the cowboy is like the most essential, quick to like symbol that represents, even though we are so far removed from cowboy, you know what I mean? Like that. And no, if anything, it should just show like a huge meat processor, like a big machine that's just like spouting out like weird chunks of like animal parts that you can't even recognize. That would probably be more appropriate to replace the cowboy symbolism.
I mean, it's just, but yeah, in American Out, it's just the city slicker thing. If you want that experience, you go on a tour like that. Again, I did my 2-week Boy Scout hike in the New Mexican mountains. I mean, that works. I didn't have a Stetson for that, which maybe I should have. Oops. That's 13. I was dumb. I didn't know any better.
I did have a Stetson as a kid.
I did at a different point in time. Now I have this hat. That's not a cat. That's more of a
no, I wouldn't.
Florida Keys hat, you know.
Yeah.
And then what else? I got this one. This one's more of a pimp hat, though. So, oops.
You can call it that. Yeah.
When I'm pimping, I can wear that one. Yeah. Yeah. All my hats are next to here. Sorry. Okay, and I'm causing an avalanche of hats now. Oops. But yeah, I don't know. When I was 22, 23, I remember trying to go out, like intentionally trying to give like a bit of a Jack Kerouac vibe, because it was the year 2000. All my peers are just wearing t-shirts and jeans, so I'm wearing, trying to look like I'm on the road, look like a beatnik in the 50s. That was what I was going for. I did not go for the cowboy, though. That's my point. Yeah. I wanted to look like Jack Kerouac at the time.
Did you do heroin?
Nah, I didn't do that.
Well, yeah.
Other.
Then you were just a poser.
I was a poser. That's right.
I feel like that's a requirement to really be part of beatnik culture. You got to start chasing the dragon.
I'm still trying to work. Yeah, I'm still trying to work out if I was a poser skater or not, because I didn't skate, but I dressed similarly. But I played punk bass in a punk band. Does that give you a get out of jail free card?
It does not. And actually, I've heard
bass player in a punk
pretty
band.
Good qualifier for if you were a poser or not, and that's that. Did you ever break a bone skating?
I heavily bruised myself.
Poser.
I didn't break a bone. Okay.
Poser.
Yeah, the heavily bruising, so I didn't do much of it.
You know what, though? It's such a clean...
I lived and learned.
It's such a clean binary yes or no that I think that it's actually got some validity to it. If you've never broken a bone skateboarding, then you were never actually a skater.
If you're asking yourself the question, the answer is probably yes. So... I was just thinking yesterday, sorry, this is super tangenty, but that band was reasonably successful in Atlanta. And at one point we did go to a talent agency. And now that I talk about this crap, I wish I remember specifically what they said, but they said several things and we were like hard no and didn't go along with it. I wonder if we went along with it, if we would have found our way into the dark underbelly of the music system.
I mean, maybe, although usually...
Or we were getting scammed. That's why I think we said no, but...
Well, a lot of the time, like these bands that get signed and they're promised all these riches, really, you're just being used as someone that's like taking out a loan and then spending it all with the people that are making you all these big promises. So at the end of it, you could just
might have been our
like,
hard no.
It's essentially you're taking out a mortgage to buy an album, and then if your album flops, then like you just owe the money for the album.
Okay, yeah, that must have been the kind of thing they were telling us, and we were like, like 17, 18, so we were like, no. But some people do it, right? Some people are like, let's go for that brass ring, and but yep. So was that an opportunity? I don't know. It might have just been a scam. So. But even if it was an opportunity, I guess it could be both at the same time is the point, right? Musicians don't make money.
It's the soul that makes the money. You got to sell just little chunks of it at a time.
Yeah, you got to be the marketer. If you want to make the money, you got to be the marketer. So if you're not going to market, it's best not to worry too much about money.
Yes, soul, the original Bitcoin.
Any other rabbit holes on this one you want to dive down? It sounded
actually,
like you had a few.
Specific rabbit hole, and that's the first
rabbit shaman rabbit.
Well, the first 60 seconds of this movie were very promising because it's got a one-legged rabbit, which right off the bat, like it opens on a one-legged rabbit, which is awesome because it's got all these insinuations to magic and cruelty and Wild West, and it also almost feels like they've literally maimed Bugs Bunny in a way that like somehow that they were playing on and caused injury to Looney Tunes as just like an entire IP umbrella. So, but they've got in the first 50 seconds even, one-legged rabbit gets attacked by a wolf, and by the way, this rabbit is later referred to as Lucky Jack, a shaman. He even Other people refer to him as a shaman. He refers to himself as a shaman. So the movie opens up on an American one-legged shaman who gets attacked by a wolf. He runs away by putting on a goat head skull. So he kind of has this like weird goat Baphomet symbolism on him. And then he gets attacked by a snake. And when the snake attacks him, he kind of bites him in the head. It makes it look like the rabbit has transformed first into a goat and then into a snake. I just thought that this was like some of the coolest Disney like references to, I don't know if it was like a synchronicity thing, but it felt very occult just getting right into it. And then you got to look at three cows singing for the next hour. But the
Yes.
opening minute,
the first minute I was in. I agree. No,
I was in.
my first notes are, damn, they branded this movie. I kind of like the visual language of this so far. The cow monologue broke the spell.
Yeah.
Maggie thinks the world is a circle. Okay.
Well, and I mean, again, man, speaking of the cows breaking the spell, I guess here's the spoiler alert, if anyone needed a spoiler alert for Home on the Range, but that Alameda Sam, he's not using violence to steal all the cows, and he's not like rustling them in the middle of the night with like a giant gang of bandits. He has figured out how to Pied Piper them. He figures out how to yodel. And when he yodels at these cows, they go into a literal hypnotic trance where first their eyes get all swirly, and then they change into fluorescent neon colors. And then once they do this, that kind of shows that they are completely under some kind of MK Ultra mind control spell by Sam Alameda. And he just marches them right out. He doesn't have to do anything really. And that's kind of his whole secret. And I thought that was genius. I thought it was genius that he's hypnotizing the cows in order to steal them. Because again, that's something that's not necessary. That didn't really even exist in that capacity in the late 19th century. Like there was mesmerism.
Did you think it was genius last week in the Jungle Book 2 where exactly the same thing happened?
Right. I mean, it was.
I mean, they weren't cows, but.
Yeah, well, no, I think that's the genius part is that you've got a cowboy that everyone's afraid because he's this big bad guy and you assume that he's got guns and he's going to like do all sorts of horrible things. But then he literally puts on like a sequin orange jacket and starts yodeling. Like it turns into like a weird, like a Texan Elvis for a moment in time. I just thought it was so unexpected and that it's like a non-violent way of stealing all these cows. Like what was he going to do with the cows? I assume that if they were raised for beef, right, he would just hypnotize them and have them just walk themselves right into the abattoir, and then the rest of it would take care of itself. Again, it's an interesting premise.
This is some. I do the Twilight Zone podcast, and as we're talking about this, the kind of like, well, magic and cowboys, I guess I should say. In this case, the cowboy is not magical, but on the Twilight Zone, there's the Lee Marvin episode, The Grave, which is kind of entertaining. The first time you watch it, it's okay, right? Basically, a marshal kills a guy and then comes to the town where he's from, and everyone's kind of pissed at him. And his sister is like maybe a witch, and everyone's daring him to go to the grave at midnight because they're like, his spirit's going to kill you, right? He finally does it, and ends up dying, which it could be the ghost, or it could be because the second time you watch it, you realize, oh, Lee Marvin's cowboy is an idiot, and he most likely just caught himself on his own cape and strangled himself. and I just covered another Lee Marvin episode of Twilight Zone. I recommend the Lee Marvin episodes to watch twice because Lee Marvin on screen, he's so cool. You're like, this is the badass. And for both those episodes, the second time you watch, you're like, this guy's an idiot. But The Grave includes magic and cowboys, which, like you said, is not normally a mix, you know?
And aliens. Cowboys. And there was a movie, Cowboys and Aliens. It was an interesting premise, but I don't know if they did very great either.
I saw it in a theater, but I might have taken a nap through part of it.
Yeah, well, yeah. Case in point. The other interesting thing about Alameda Sam, too, is that he seems to represent directly the old man in the mountain from Marco Polo stories. Are you familiar with this story? I think it's come up once or twice on this series before.
I always think of New Hampshire when I hear Old Man on the Mountain, which is probably what it.
Old Man on the Mountain was Middle East. I want to say it was 1140s or something. I probably have that way wrong, but it was definitely early on. It was like around sort of Crusades, I think. I don't know which ones, but some of the Crusades. And this guy called Old Man on the Mountain, he literally lived inside of a big hollowed out mountain that he would mind control people into coming in there, and he would, give them missions to go back out into the world and take down his opponents and stuff. But he was known as the Old Man on the Mountain, which is literally what Alameda Slim is kind of doing, even up to the hypnotizing and the mind control aspect.
I guess it is weird. I guess he's one of the more like charming Disney villains. Like you might even want
violent.
Yeah, that's part of it. It's like, oh, he's not doing anything wrong, but I guess that's what the bankers might say. Oh, this is just finances, man. Nothing personal.
Also, Disney redid Pied Piper, and I believe they made Mickey the Pied Piper. So like they've got this like a precedent that the Pied Piper villain is maybe not the villain. Maybe it was the friends you made along the way. No, maybe it's like the world that the kids are coming from and they are leaving is the real villain.
Yeah, and this one, doesn't really. I mean, he is the villain, but there is no real villain in here, which is weird for an old West movie or a Western style movie. Western. I guess they didn't want to make it like the Indians as movies of the 30s, 40s, and 50s did, because you definitely don't want to do that in 2004.
There's not a single Native American in this entire movie, is there?
But there is a shaman who's a rabbit,
right? It talks like he's an old sort of like gold prospector.
But watching it, right? But I did kind of take a little bit like, oh, I guess this is. What is that? Is that like the Dances with Wolves thing where he goes native? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, he's Kevin Costner in this case, so the whitewashed.
Hey,
Native
it makes
American.
sense that this is our second Kevin Costner reference in a thing about westerns. Although I was listening to somebody recently say that the thing with Costner is it's like we think of him as like a Western actor, but he's only been in like 3 Westerns. Just like every movie he's in ends up feeling like a Western. See A Perfect World for a good reference.
And Yellowstone kind of adds to that too.
Right. So
it's
really
just Western, but it's cowboy adjacent.
But he's got that persona that just makes anything he's in a Western, whereas no one in this has it. Roseanne Barr is not a good person.
Yeah, Jennifer Tilly, Steve Buscemi. I don't think any of them are necessarily.
Right. You have Chucky was in this, we're good to go. But this is not that kind of movie. I mean, that of course that's Tilly I'm thinking of specifically, but sure, put Steve Buscemi or Roseanne Barr in a Chucky movie. I'll go for that. A Western, even an animated one's a little weird. Like, God, I mean, what? Come on, we got Tim Blake Nelson? Hire him. What's going on here? There's so many. Hire Costner. He wasn't doing much in 2004.
The other big sort of takeaway I got from this movie too was that the government is the bad guy, and Disney doesn't imply this, but if you dissect the actual things that happen in this movie, here's the 4 main plot points that all show that the government is the real villain in Home on the Range. 1, the government's essentially behind the entire apparatus of reclaiming the land from these farmers and auctioning it off, right? Like this is essentially happening at the government level. The auctions are. 2, the sheriff is literally the one that he rents his own horse to the mercenary that's supposed to go and like chase this guy down. So this is the government giving their resources to like private security firms. 3, it's the government through the sheriff that's actually enforcing the bank in repossessing the land from the farmers. None of that would be happening if it weren't for the sheriff. And in this movie, this is sort of the proxy through Buck the horse. The horse and the dog, they're the ones that are like looking at the bill that says $750 or else you're going to lose your house, and they're saying, sorry, you don't got enough. Even if you bring up $500, that's not going to be enough. Sorry, it's how it works. That's kind of them saying like, or else we will show up with guns and take it from you, right? Like that's kind of the implied violence in all this. But again, this is the government enforcing that. If
you want to stretch the spell casting taffy, doesn't Disney World have to deal with this 20 years later as the Florida government tries to claim their Reedy Creek Development District. Who's the villain in that case?
Yeah, dude, that one is probably one of the deepest conspiracy theories in all of Disney, but it doesn't have the flash and pizzazz of like Illuminati and like Human Sacrifice does. But it's truly is one of the ones that there's inner workings and like behind the scenes deals that are constantly going on between whether or not Disney gets to operate as like a sovereign sort of entity within the state of Florida. What was the episode of Family Guy where Peter like declares his own country, like he turns his house into a country and he doesn't have to pay taxes, and but then he declares war on the US or something. Like that's sort of what Disney World emphasis on world kind of is, because it's not nothing like Disneyland. A lot of people that think that they've been to Disneyland, maybe they've like got the whole experience. Nothing like going to Disney World. Disney World is something like 10 times the size, and if you include Epcot and Animal Kingdom and all of the other properties, it's like over 40 times the size of Disneyland.
Yeah, and Tokyo is like California size. So I haven't been to California Disneyland, but Tokyo and Florida are very different creatures. Here's one, just while we're talking about that, one interesting thing is Japan, like no one's heard of Epcot Center. Everybody knows Disney World, but they don't know Epcot Center. That one, for some reason, seems to like not translate to. Doesn't make sense to other cultures. If they added geodesic ears to it, I bet you more people would know about it. Well, they did. They added a wand for a while. It looked like crap, right?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did.
I hated
that. The whole point of Epcot is to get ignorant Americans, more acquainted with the rest of the world. Because Epcot is sort of like the international theme park. You go there, and the entire place is split up into different countries because most Americans couldn't care less, or they just won't ever have the chance to leave America. God bless them, because why would you leave the greatest country on earth? But this is like their one outlet into the rest of the world. So it doesn't make as much sense that international countries would care anything at all about Epcot, because all Epcot is kind of a dumbed down version of them.
You might be speaking too much truth of some kind because you are glitching out. I'm getting robot voice.
Yeah, apparently you're not allowed to talk bad about Epcot in Orlando city limits.
You're not allowed to talk bad about Epcot. Okay. That is my favorite. Well, okay, 1990 Epcot is my favorite park, I guess. You gotta go back 30 years for it to be my favorite park.
It was also in Epcot, it was one of the only parks that you could drink beer in the park, and it didn't require a membership to Club 33 like it does on the West Coast. That was the thing on the West Coast, is part of the perk of being in the secret Disney society, is that you could get drunk while you were at Disney.
Right. Yeah, well, the other parks, you've always been able to do that. So, what do we do? Last time I went to Epcot Center, we had medical grade not CBD, no, cannabinoid, medical grade cannabinoid, and then hit the margaritas out, and then journey into your imagination was almost fun.
Well, I don't think you got that on Disney property.
Oh no! We got the margaritas on Disney property, Mexico,
well, yeah,
man.
Yeah,
they'll put ant rim on your ant salt on your glass to get you used to eating bugs again. Like, hey, that sounds cool. Black ant salt, why not?
Wait, is this a Bug's Life ride? You got little chunks of the protagonist on the rim of your glass.
Oh man, they missed some synergy there. Oops.
And I wanted to close this thought too, that there's one other example of how the government is the villain in this movie, and that's that out of ego alone, the horse, Buck, he decides that he's going to prevent this farm from saving itself just because he's established himself as the authority, and he'll be damned if anyone undermines his authority, even at the sake of completely destroying his own community, which sounds kind of like modern policing.
I only remember that horse when we're talking about that horse. Otherwise, I completely forget he's in this movie and that Cuba Gooding Jr. did the voice.
Well,
Like,
it stands
he's
out to me
so-
too because he looks a lot like Mr. Horse from Ren and Stimpy. There's a few scenes where he looks almost identical to what Mr. Horse looked like. So it also felt like Disney was incorporating Looney Tunes, Ren and Stimpy. Like they were kind of pulling from a lot of different non-Disney animations as influence here.
Yeah, and just banking for a lawsuit, I guess.
Do you remember Mr. Horse from Ren and Stimpy? He was the one who would be like, "No, sir, I don't like it. I don't like it at all."
See, I always just went directly to the Space Madness episode. So I've seen Space Madness like 20 times and other Ren and Stimpy's like 1 time.
You're missing out big. I mean, Space Madness is great, but you are absolutely missing out on like Sven, which is Ren's cousin that looks just like Stimpy.
I remember that. Okay, yeah, that rings a bell.
Sells the magic cheese logs.
Okay,
and,
now you're saying this stuff.
That had the dad in it. The dad was man. I have to go back and just rewatch all the Ren and Stimpy now.
Okay, so I guess you're saying the other stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, but Mr. Horse did not just ring a bell. Sorry,
Mr. Toast or Super Toast Man.
That sounds familiar. The other thing is I haven't watched Ren and Stimpy for 20 years, so I'm working on very old memories for all of this. More than 20 years, probably.
Powdered Toast Man.
Anything else you have?
So there's one line in this movie too that again it's just like, get ready for this decline of American culture, and it always triggers me when I hear someone say this, and I realize that there's all different ways of looking at it, but basically the farm's going away, these 3 cows are wandering the desert trying to figure out a way to save their human handler who doesn't know how to run a farm, and so it's like, you know, a damned sort of mission from its start. But
she's just going to fail again. They need an animal farm. They need to start an animal farm.
And a
communist animal farm.
It's either Roseanne or Tilly. I think it's Roseanne. And she says something like, you know, someone always has it worse. They're complaining about how bad this is. And she's like, someone's always got it worse. And as she says that, she sees the one-legged shaman rabbit kind of hopping by, right? And this is... okay, on one side, it's a valid NLP reframe perspective shift where it's like, okay, maybe what I'm going through isn't the end of the world. People have gotten through worse things. So there is an empowerment aspect of it, but there's also very much a nefarious, like, just suck it up and take it aspect of it, which brings to mind this, and I'm not going to deliver it as a joke, but there's a good Doug Stanhope rant. And it essentially ends with this premise that your suck doesn't make my suck any less suck. And that, like, just because you're complaining or highlighting some worse trial or tribulation that you've been through, that doesn't actually negate anything that someone else is going through. And that premise, right? I kind of feel is like such a toxic aspect where something really bad is happening and someone's like, yeah, but at least we're not like dying. It's like, yeah, you can always find an example comparison where it's like, yeah, at least I don't have flesh eating bacteria like slowly devouring my eyeball as I'm sitting here. Of course not. Of course it's better than that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that is justification to just like grunt and take whatever the hell you're going through. So I don't know. That always makes me triggered a little bit. So there's my rant on it.
I'm guessing that this is a 90% chance no answer, but have you seen the 1973 Lost Horizon musical? Do you know Lost Horizon?
I know the video game Lost Horizon. I think it's not the same though.
Okay, there's the 30s movie, like 39, 37.
No, actually, that does sound familiar. But
people are escaping China and they crash in Shangri-La, right? So and that's a pretty good movie, especially for its time.
That is actually what the game is based on, by the way.
Okay. 1973, there's a musical version with songs done by Burt Bacharach and Hal David. It's one of the cheesiest movies you've ever seen, but like in a good way. It's like just 70s schlock up the wazoo. It's kind of more satisfying than Xanadu in many ways, which I guess Shangri-La is kind of Xanadu, isn't it? Anyway, it has, I forget who the actress is, but it has in Shangri-La, the teacher is singing to the kids, "The world is a circle," that's why I referenced it earlier, because of that line that you said. But yeah, just like someone's always doing crappier than you, and this big song being sung to school children in a utopia. So it's like, That's one of the most programmy scenes in a movie I've ever seen in a way. But
it's one of the most insidious and easily programmed versions of like shut up and just eat it. You know what I mean? Like if you just start pointing out, I guess the one that I remember growing up with was like there's starving kids in China, right? If you didn't finish all of the food on your plate, I guess that was.
They told me Ethiopia, but sure.
Well, whatever, Ethiopia. But yeah, that was the one that I always heard was like there's some starving kid in China. We're not throwing that out. So yeah, that's the exact premise of like, hey, you know, you think this is bad that you have to finish your Brussels sprouts. Well, there's someone that's like starving to death, which always felt like an unfair comparison. Where it's like, so my options are die from starvation or being force fed.
Finish
like
your homework. There's oppressed kids in China.
They take away their homework in China here to punish them.
That's right. You should be lucky that you have to do all this busy work.
There's a interesting note that in the beginning of the movie, right when we find out that the farm is going to be sold, out of context, but there's a scene where the pigs are trying to get like the cans from the goat, and they literally shout, "Kill the goat," and then they attack him. And I was just thinking like that would actually solve a lot of the problems, maybe.
And again, make this an animal farm. Come on, Disney, have some cojones.
And okay, so here's where me being a city slicker is going to play in, and you might not know the answer to this either. But what are you doing raising pigs if it's not to resell them or to slaughter them? Because she's got a bunch of pigs here, right? She's got baby pigs and a couple of big pigs. What are you doing with pigs on a farm? I understand if you take them out in the woods and you go like truffle hunting, but not in the Midwest, right? Not in Wyoming. So what is the purpose of a pig on a farm if it's
pig
not
milk?
Water? Yeah, pig milk, I guess. Good old pig milk.
They can survive without their ears. No, my equally city slicker question, which this maybe it's obvious you do this. I was just like, is it really that smart to keep like 50 bulls together? Aren't bulls kind of aggressive?
Yeah, that was definitely weird to just have nothing but bulls in a huge field. It seems like the inverse, but yeah, maybe that's more of the inversion of Disney to come.
Because I remember on that Boy Scout trip, one of the kids trying to taunt a cow or bull and then being chased by the cow or bull for a while. Like I think it was actually just a cow, but you don't want a cow chasing you. So we're just standing there as we're like nowhere near civilization. So if
I could hurt you, man. Those things are huge and heavy.
I mean, we thought it was funny, but yeah, we were all, and then people were like throwing dried cow dung at each other, which I guess it's dry. It's like dirt now, but I didn't join in that game. It didn't look fun.
So, I mean, yeah, upstate New York, that was one of the things that I remember kids I grew up with. They would just find
moisture there.
Well, they would find chunks of like dry, dehydrated cow dung. And I remember one time a kid, he threw a chunk, but it had like a rock inside of it. So when it hit another kid, it split his head open, but it like pushed actual cow manure inside of the cut in his head. And it turned into like a big issue because apparently it's not super, sterile to have cow dung pushed inside of an open wound.
No, I had to get a tetanus shot after doing this last month. Oops. Yeah, still almost okay. I'm showing you my bum arm. It looked much worse a month ago, but yeah, they're like, "Oh, you ate dung in the street, tetanus shot."
One final note here to just put a nail in the coffin that Home on the Range is about the decline of America as we knew it. And that's that there's a very specific scene that when they find the 3 cows that wander into town, they're like, what the hell are these cows doing? They get into a big fight outside of this saloon. And when the sheriff comes back out, he assumes that the cows belong to this wagon that happened to be passing by. It was owned by a Chinese immigrant. So he ties the cows up to the Chinese immigrant guy's wagon. And he's like, get these out of here, whatever. And the immigrant dude goes, wow, what a country, free cows. And I was just thinking, like, that's another way that you can basically completely destroy a country, is just wait for the immigrants to show up and then take the American people's resources and just give it to them for free and just let them steal them and get out of town. And again, this is the government facilitating this exact sort of transaction. So if there's not a more appropriate, like, single little runaway gag that explains like the whole downfall of America than the government taking Americans' resources that they desperately need in order to survive and then just giving them to like an immigrant for free.
All right. I guess we'll wind it down today. Also, you've been increasingly turning into a robot. So unfortunately, I don't know if you have a hurricane your way.
We actually do have a bad storm happening right now.
Okay, well, that explains it. So if people might have heard me go, because there was one point where I got this like treble like in my ear. It was wild. It's never happened before. I've been programmed by the internet now. Internet glitches. It's like old school modem or something. Anyway, I'm actually sorry for that.
Contacting you from the past.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. You are. It is Friday morning for me, so you are in the past. You've got Thursday evening. Well, hopefully you can not robot out and tell us what's up and your domain.
The big one is IlluminatiComic.com. It's a comic that I've done with Donut on the Bavarian Illuminati, and I believe it's probably the most complete, definitely the most entertaining recap of the Illuminati from 1770s all the way to modern day ever been attempted by anyone. We've also had the pleasure of illustrating a whole bunch of people and concepts and events that I don't think have ever been illustrated before in Illuminati history. For example, like this great lightning strike that sort of brought the entire secret society down. So it's going to be huge. It's going to be a really fun one. And you can find it at IlluminatiComic.com.
All righty. On my end, I like to podcast about lots of media. The hub for that is on Patreon at Podcastio Podcastius. Like I said, I talk about the Twilight Zone at Time Enough Podcast, Space 1999 at Podcast 1999. And I talk about a whole bunch of movies that are supposed to be really good or really bad. According to IMDb users, that's films and filth. Things tied together. There's movies there that kind of tie with the stuff we do. If anyone wants to make a weird lattice of podcasting. So, oh man. Well, I guess I'm going to go walk around the city eating cheese now. Cheese is on sale this week. Gouda cheese.
Spread the word with propaganda packs, all for just $40 shipped at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
These huge all-weather slaps will last in public for years to come. Remind citizens that birds are not real. Self-immolation is an option, and might make you magnetic. Do your part and get a propaganda pack today from paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
What are you waiting for? Go to paranoidamerican.com right now and get a paranoid propaganda pack.
Ready for a cosmic conspiracy about Stanley Kubrick, moon landings, and the CIA? Go visit nasacomic.com.
nasacomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com.
Never a Straight Answer is a 40-page comic about Stanley Kubrick directing the Apollo space missions.
Yeah, go visit NASAcomic.com.
This is the perfect read for comic, Kubrick, or conspiracy fans of all ages. For more details, visit nasacomic.com.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.